Financial Survival Network, helping you to survive and thrive in the new economy. Get our complimentary newsletter at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. This is the Financial Survival Network.
FSN, it's about what's next. Obamacare is with us, at least until people come into office who are willing to get rid of it. So the key is don't be a victim. Play the game, fine, but don't be a loser. That's why we've got Dr. Elaina George back with us to explain to you how you do it. Dr. George, it's a pleasure. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's an honor to be back with you today.
Hey, so you're talking about Obamacare. It is what it is, but you don't have to be wrapped up in it. You can opt out. How do you do that?
Well, I think what I want everybody to realize is that there's a parallel system that never gets talked about. They talk about Obamacare as if it's the only option, and if you don't have health care insurance, then you're going to die. That's how they framed this. And over the past several years, it's become obvious to private practice doctors like myself that if we really want to practice using the Hippocratic Oath, and if we really want to continue to be advocates for our patients, we have to offer a fee-for-service model. And people think that it's more expensive to see a doctor and pay out of pocket, when in actuality, it's the exact opposite. I actually did an interview on my show, Medicine on Call, today with the doctor who has a surgery center in Oklahoma, and he lists his surgery prices online. Everything is covered. One price for the anesthesia, the OR, the doctor's fee, and it's about a third of what it costs to take a patient to the hospital. The Surgery Center of Oklahoma is what I'm talking about. These doctors, there's a group of doctors across the country that are now deciding this is a no-win situation. No matter what we do, no matter how many regulations we follow, all it's doing is it's keeping us from treating our patients, and there's a middleman now that's been inserted, the government and the insurance companies, who are now practicing medicine for all intents and purposes. I actually have insurance companies that have written to me and told me that what I want to do, what is mandated by my surgical specialty society, is not medically necessary. Now, when they start saying that, I'm done, because now they're deciding what care I can give to my patient, and they're not paying for it. And Obamacare doubles down on that. What people don't realize is that the government now will become the arbiter of whether someone's covered and what medications are allowed. And they're going to supersede the insurance companies, which is bad enough. And they're mandating that you and I pay for the privilege of being rationed. You know, what I want to do for my patient is being decided by somebody else. I don't have a voice anymore. And people are going to pay more for that. It's a tragedy, really, I have to say.
So now the steps you take to remain well, your diet, your lifestyle steps, all that become even more important than the way they were before. I mean, let's face it, it's always important that you eat right and that you exercise. But now it's even more important because the system is totally stacked against you, even more so than it was before, right?
It's now become a grid. It's becoming a regulated, mandated grid. Not only am I, if I decide to take Medicaid and Medicare, for example, I have to fill out quality assurance stuff for my electronic medical record system, which means I need to ask patients questions like, have you ever tried to hurt yourself? Do you have a gun in the home? How many people live in your home? I have to ask that. And if I don't, I'm going to get a cut in my Medicare, Medicaid reimbursement. So there's a fiduciary stick that's being used against doctors, making them enter their patients into this system. So privacy is gone, essentially. Then you add in the fact that they have evidence-based medicine, which is driven by the pharmaceutical industry, which has guidelines for how you treat a sore throat, how you treat a sinus infection, what antibiotics you're allowed to use. That all comes into play. I can't use what I like because evidence-based medicine says I should use something else, and I can't take you to surgery. I mean, this is the kind of micromanagement that's coming online. And if your doctor doesn't do it, they may not be able to practice medicine anymore. And if they're in a hospital, they can be dinged with peer review and maintenance of certification, all these new hurdles that are coming, that are being created to keep doctors in like rats in a maze. You're so busy recertifying and taking tests that you don't have time to really be advocates for your patient. It's not pretty.
And if you're somebody like you, Dr. George, who really does care about your patients, and you put their interest first, by all indications, and I've spoken to you a number of times now, it's got to be tearing you up inside, isn't it?
You know, I've gone from anger, the whole thing, to now an acceptance. And now that I've reached that point, I realize I don't have to play the game. I don't have to be a victim. I have options just like my patients do. And what I've learned over the past several months is that it is a thriving free market system out there that people just don't know about. There's a company called libertyhealthshare.org. That's the website. It's a cost-sharing company, which means that people pool their resources. They pay into this pot nationwide, and this company will pay your health bills for you. It's not insurance. However, it is under the guidelines of Obamacare allowed. And what it does is it allows you to control your pocketbook and go where you want to go. So, for example, listen to this for a second. It will blow your mind. $199 a month for an individual. They'll have to pay $500 maximum out of pocket, and they'll be covered for $1 million per occurrence per year. And you compare that to Obamacare, where you can pay up to $800 or $900, maybe $1,000 out of pocket per month for your premium, and up to $2,500, $6,000 on a deductible before the insurance kicks in. And then when it does kick in, they'll get to tell you who you get to see, what you get done. Which one would you pick? And it's like a no-brainer.
Yeah, for sure. I've checked that out. I just want to go back here. So, Dr. George, you've been through a lot of schooling, a lot of training. Why did you become a doctor in the first place?
And it sounds cliche, but I really wanted to help people. And it's from the time I was a kid, it was always something medicine. First it was a veterinarian. I'm going to be a veterinarian. Then it was a doctor. And it changed from different types of surgeons to I finally settled on ear, nose, and throat. I love what I do. It's about being able to talk to the patient, get to know the patient. And that's what I was trained to be the first line of making my diagnosis was to ask questions. And over my course of my career, and I haven't been in practice forever, only 15 years, it's been a change. So it's not about having the time to take care of your patient. You have so much paperwork and so much nonsense that you have to jump through that it's a layer that's been created that's working at odds with what I trained to do. It's very simple. You talk to your patient, you and your patient decide what the problem is and how you're going to fix it. It's not that simple anymore. And people are now getting sicker. It's costing them more. Doctors can barely stay open. Something's wrong with the system. And if you really look at the common denominator, it's the same thing. It's the insertion of the middleman, the insurance companies, and now the government.
Yeah. So you got into this really a passion to help people, a love of it. And then you go through a lot of schooling. I mean, I saw you've got a master's in biology and I assume you went for your residency, probably got a fellowship, and, took for what seemed like forever to finally get out. And then this confronts you. And forget about Obamacare. It wasn't there for most of your career, but regulations, insurance companies, paperwork. And what are you thinking when you find this medical bureaucracy, not to mention the drug companies? They've got their agenda, which is just pushing their drugs through. Often whether they help people or not is besides the point. I mean, how do you not become cynical?
Well, you become educated. That's how you stop being cynical. I mean, I think everybody has two choices to make. I think everybody in this country knows that things aren't quite right. And you have two options. buckle under, get along, and hope for the best, or take control of your life. I love what I do, as you said, and I don't want anybody to devalue my services, my talents as a doctor. I spent years honing them. Nobody has the right to tell me how to treat my patients. It should be a decision between me and my patient. And I'm stubborn. I refuse to give that up. It's not right. And I'm knowing that it's a cartel that's driving it. This is a medical industrial complex. That's how I see it. You've got the corporate interests who are deciding what constitutes good health care, what it constitutes to treat somebody, what medicines you're allowed to use. And Obamacare literally, it puts it into a structure that they hope and think that nobody can work their way out of. IRS is going to come after you to take your money. The doctor won't be able to treat you the way they want to. The hospitals and the insurance companies get to decide what standard of care is. This is not a situation that people want to be in. And for those who think that socialized medicine is the answer, they need to really look at socialized medicine in real time. A lot of those countries are now privatizing. Sweden is, the United Kingdom is, Canada is, because socialized medicine doesn't work. And people are dying in those systems. And there's something called a Liverpool care pathway that people need to know about. It's a euthanasia pathway in the UK to save money. And the hospitals actually get paid to put people in that pathway. That's completely and the antithesis of what a doctor should do. And that's coming to, a hospital near you if we really keep going down this path.
Yeah, that is horrible. I've read about that. And, under certain circumstances, euthanasia is preferred when there is no hope and the patient has decided that they don't want to suffer. Needs to be meted out very thoughtfully. And want to talk more about the paradigm that you're proposing up next on the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. We are back with Dr. Elaina George. We're talking about the new paradigm that you can choose to follow without Obamacare, without the government opting out. So let's talk about this Liberty Health Share option, about self-pay. So many practices won't accept a self-pay patient, will they, Dr. George?
Actually, there's a growing number of practices who will, and they're popping up all over. In Atlanta, for example, there's an urgent care, at North Atlanta Urgent Care, that's run by board-certified emergency medicine physicians, and it's a flat fee, whether you have insurance or not, and for whatever you do, whether it's an X-ray, blood work, to see the doctor, it's $135 flat fee. And you ask yourself, how can they charge such a small amount? Well, because they've cut out all the insurance nonsense. And it's about being able to make decisions and treat your patients and not have to waste time on the phone. Apply to get your when you submit a claim, having to fight that makes a big difference about being able to deliver efficient, quality health care. And they actually have to compete in a market where they have to be better and cheaper if they want to get business. That's to the benefit of both the patient and the doctor when that system is allowed to run. It's cheaper and it's better. It's kind of counterintuitive, but that's one example.
That's a great thing. Yeah, I mean, how much of your practice is devoted to the front office? I mean, every doctor's office I walk into in Florida, they've got 4, 5, 6 people in the front just processing paperwork. It's amazing.
They have to. I mean, I've had my office manager on hold with some of these insurance companies for about 30 minutes, and then she gets cut off, and then she has to call back. It's. I don't know how she does it. I don't know how the front desk does it. I'd be very frustrated because you're working in a system where they don't care. They know you have nowhere else to go, so they don't mind frustrating you. Hopefully you'll hang up and not bother them. That's their mentality. And they have nobody, there's no pressure to make them better. They just get a funnel of money from the government or from taxes. Now it's going to be worse under Obamacare because they'll get paid whether they help you or not.
Yeah, and these insurance companies now under Obamacare, because no young people are signing up for the policy. Surprise. You and I had talked about this, and you knew that the young people were not going to sign up for it because why would they? It made no sense. But now the insurance companies are all going to get a bailout from the federal government, right?
It's written into the bill, and it's a tragedy. And if you really think about it critically, it's the first step towards single payer. Because once the government pays for these things, then they get to control what the access is. I mean, it's just whoever controls the pocketbook has the power.
Yeah, it's called the golden rule.
Exactly.
He who has the gold makes the rules.
Yep. And if it's not the patient, then they're going to be at the mercy of something larger than they are, nobody cares more about you than you. So I don't think anybody should lull themselves into thinking the government's going to take care of me and they're going to love me. They're not. It's about the bottom line. And you now become a cost center. So if your disease costs too much, then they're going to talk about hospice and palliative care and some morphine because it's cheaper than radiation or surgery or an expensive medication. That's how they're going to think about it. It's not going to be you and your family member anymore.
Yeah, so you're a cost to be controlled, just like an employee in a corporation. And how can we get by paying the least amount for your affliction? And God forbid you're a high-cost patient. At some point, there's a cutoff where we're just not going to pay any more to treat you.
That's on the one end. Think about it on the other end. Because your doctors will put in your height and your weight and your body mass index will be entered into a system. So if you're considered to be obese and overweight, then they're going to come after you on the other end. You have to lose weight in order to do X. This is the big gulp popcorn scenario where they control you socially because you're going to cost the system too much. So your actions will be controlled. Smoking, no, you have to join a gym, or I can see other things like you have to have a vaccine because, you're going to make other people sick. It's all sorts of collectivist thinking that you now become part of a whole and no longer an individual.
Yeah, God forbid you smoke cigarettes. It's all over for you, huh?
Definitely. Or God forbid you have a gene that potentially could cause breast cancer. Well, that's a whole nother pressure that may be put on you. I mean, your health privacy is gone. And that's not a good thing. I don't think patients should be willing to give that up for a supposed subsidy, which in actuality, if you actually take the Obamacare subsidies and you go on Medicaid, for example, that is the absolute distillation of transfer of wealth. Because if you, God forbid, don't make it and you have property, the government will seize that. You won't be able to leave that to your child or to your estate. You're going to have to pay it back. If you get a better financial situation the next year, you won't get a tax return. They're going to take back the money that they paid for your subsidy the year before. So this is not a good situation for anybody.
So it sounds like it's the worst of all possible worlds. And the Obamacare website, all of it, you waive all your privacy. There is no security there. And supposedly there's some malignant hacker code built in from some subcontractor from the former Soviet Union. So you're better off never getting involved with it in the first place and doing health share. What was that? Liberty Health Share, I think you said it was?
LibertyHealthShare.org. Yeah. And it's the best case scenario because you don't get dinged with Obamacare fines because it's allowed. Well, they think that you don't know anything, so you only have, you're not going to explore anything. They live for the fact that you're not going to do your own homework. And if you start doing your homework and opt out, you don't have to wait for the government or for the Republicans to get in and help you. You can help yourself. Why wait? Let this thing wither on the vine by withdrawing your consent and stop feeding the beast with your taxes and your fines and take care of yourself. It's going to be a much cheaper, much more satisfying way to do it.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. And really, like you said, like we started this segment off, don't be a victim. You don't have to be a victim. And if you're buying that bare bones coverage, now, granted, I'm a big believer that if you buy catastrophic coverage, that might be the best way to go, although catastrophic coverage could easily send you into bankruptcy. But if you do catastrophic coverage combined with self-pay, that could be just the ticket, because the odds are, actuarially speaking, catastrophic coverage, probably the odds are you're not going to need it. And then you combine it with self-pay options like you and I have been discussing, that could be just the ticket. Because I remember many years ago, my friend who is a doctor had a policy with a $10,000 deductible. And, he got favorable rates from other doctors when he and his family had to see them. But the price of the coverage was so small. It was like a few $100s a month. The savings in it was so enormous that it more than covered his out-of-pocket expenses. Then, of course, you know what happened. New York State banned that type of policy. You combine high deductible policy with a health savings account, and that could really be the ticket and a good option for you. But you have to figure this stuff out. We had a guy on smartpatientacademy.com, and this was an option that he said was viable for many people if it's low cost enough.
Another option is something like supplemental like Aflac, which will actually pay you to see your doctor and have procedures done. And they have a policy that gives you pays 70% of any kind of cancer payment or cancer treatment. And so there's a lot of ways to work this system. There's another website called the selfpaypatient.com, which is similar to what you just described. And he gives a ton of different strategies that you can use. So there's a lot of ways to play the game. And I agree with you, especially if you're healthy, something that's high deductible, and then go to one of these self-pay arrangements where it's a fraction of what it costs. I mean, there are primary care doctors that are treating patients for $40, or some people have an $80 it's charged monthly to like a membership almost.
Yeah, concierge.
Pay. No, this is not concierge technically.
Yeah.
It's just $80 a month, but all your health needs are covered for the year, right? So you can go in there and get your exams, your blood work. I mean, it's like a flat fee. It's not thousands of dollars actually. So people have gotten savvy, and they realize no one wants to pay thousands of dollars for healthcare just to belong to a club. And they're making it cost effective, and it's convenient. And people who are on Medicaid and Medicare can afford these, but not give up the quality of care. Because ultimately, this is becoming a two-tier system.
Yep.
Those who enter the Obamacare system will enter a substandard level of health care. I'm going to be honest. And people like myself who care and are board certified and actually are patient-centered are not going to be in it. And the people who really have value for their own health needs will know the difference, and they're going to start voting with their pocketbook. So eventually this is going to be a free market system one way or another. I say don't be a victim first and then realize too late that you're in trouble. Make a decision now and help yourself.
Yeah, that's the point. It's a great point. And the two-tier system, I've talked to other doctors who've said exactly the same thing. And they're actually calling it not Obamacare, but Obamacade. And the fact is, more people have lost coverage under this law than have gotten it under the healthcare insurance exchanges. It's a fact.
That's very true.
And more people will be losing it in the future. And, forget about political solutions. If it comes, great. You'll be saved, but don't count on the government to save you, just like you can't count on the courts to save you because they're not there to save you. That's not their job. They're not going to save you. Much better you listen to Dr. George's advice and you save yourself now. Hey, Dr. George, give us your website, and you've got a lot of links to these other sites we were talking about. I'm going to try to get some people on from Liberty Health Share to explain their services and what they do. Just give us your site.
It's drelainageorge.com, DRELAINA, George, like the man's name.com. And like you said, there's links to all the things that we talked about. I also have a radio show, Medicine on Call, which is on Liberty Express Radio on Sundays. And I have an interview this week with a doctor from Oklahoma, Surgery Center of Oklahoma. So you get some real-time information on how to navigate this system.
Hey, and don't forget, look in the show notes to this interview on financialsurvivalnetwork.com. We've got a link to Dr. George's site. Don't forget, sign up for the newsletter. Got a good one coming out about how bad the energy crisis really is in the Northeast. Dr. George, thanks so much for being on. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Warning, you might live in a no-constitution zone. It's the shocking story you won't see on TV. Depending upon where you live in the United States, you may no longer have constitutional rights. Politicians are quietly squeezing the middle class to micromanage you and extract your wealth. Want to see how? Watch the free video at noconstitutionzone.com. Soon, you'll have the last laugh by using these cultural contraband tricks and profit like a king. That's noconstitutionzone.com.
Our friend Tom Dyson at the Palm Beach Letter is giving away free copies of a really cool report he put together called How to Protect Yourself from America's New Secret Police. Inside, you'll learn all sorts of simple, everyday tricks you can use to make yourself a little less visible and vulnerable to scammers, hackers, and even the federal government. For instance, inside Tom's report, you'll learn which free internet email service never to use. This company doesn't care if your account gets hacked or not, or things the government must tell you if they request your social security number, and how to spot skimmers lying in wait on ATMs and gas pumps, and much, much more. These tricks and secrets are low-hanging fruit ideas. You don't have to invest time or much money into them. Most are free. But by taking some basic measures, you can make your privacy much harder to invade than your neighbors. Tom's report is available for a limited time to listeners who take a trial subscription to his newsletter. Just visit the Financial Survival Network homepage for more information, or go to www.palmbeachletter2.com. That's www.palmbeachletter2.com.
The Financial Survival Network, helping you to survive and thrive in the new economy. Get our complimentary newsletter at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. This is the Financial Survival Network.